little, it was not taken here in America. It was taken in France, where I was born and raised. And I want to show you where that is. This is a map of the world. And we are here, over there in America, but I was born over here in Europe. Can you see the white spot there? That's France, where I was born and raised. But my parents are not from France. My parents came from a country in Asia. They were immigrants there, and then I was born and raised there. I went to school there. I learned to read and write there in French, because that's what they speak there. And you know what else is kind of neat in France? Back then, when I was growing up there in the 1960s, a long time ago, there was no broccoli. But all my life, I dreamed that I would write stories and books for children. But I was also really worried because I didn't know what to write about. I had already written my best childhood memory. I didn't know what else to write about. So what I did was just make a really short list of childhood memories, simple. You know, I wrote down brother, model airplane, and then pet snail, because I had a pet snail when I was a kid. And then I just started writing stories. And when they were good enough, I just wrote them the way they happened. But when they weren't so interesting, then I made up things to make them more interesting. Where my first book came from. The title is Vero and Philippe. Vero is the girl right there. Can you see her? She's 9 years old. And Philippe is her big brother. He's 12. That's his model airplane. And the book was illustrated by Preston McDaniels. When the book begins, Vero and Philippe and their family move from the countryside to the big city, and they're unpacking, and he's unpacking his model airplane, and then she's looking out the window, but she's not happy. See, they just moved from the countryside to Paris, which is a big city, and she misses the country because she loved the forest there and the red flower fields and the horse farms near her home. And so this is the forest in Normandy, in the countryside. And this is what the poppy fields look like. And then near her home in the country, there were also horse farms like this one. And so she's leaving all this countryside that she really loves. And now she's moved to the city, to a street that might look like this. No trees, lots of cars, very different. No wonder she doesn't like it. And this is the next picture from inside the book. And so this is Vero on her first day at school. And she's being teased at recess by these two girls, but she's also making a new friend who's going to become her best friend. And when I was a kid, this happened to me. You know, my family moved from the countryside to the city, and it was so different, I didn't like it. And when I went to this new school, there weren't mean girls who teased me. That never happened. I made it up to make the story more interesting. But I did make a new friend who became my best friend. So I mixed things, made things up as needed to make things more interesting. And so while going to school in France back then in the 1960s, Vero's notebook at school might have looked like this. This is actually a page of my notebook when I was maybe in 3rd grade. And you can see here the purple ink on the page. Can you see that? How it's written in purple ink? That's because I used a special pen. See how the point of it, it's that special metal point. It's called a nib. And what you do with it is dip it in the inkwell, and then write with it. And here you can see the inkwell from the top, and it's empty for the photo, but normally there's ink in the bottom. Here you can see Vero and her new friend playing in a garden. And the garden really exists. It's a garden that's in the city of Paris. See, this is a big garden right in the middle of the city. It's been there for hundreds of years, and it was built especially for children. So it's full of things for children to do. Or you can rent a toy boat to sail on the basin. Or another thing you can do is go on a pony ride. Another thing you can do is rent one of these things. Look at that. You sit here and you pedal to make it go, and then you pull on the reins to make it turn, and you can have races together. When I was a kid, I used to go there, and I loved to play there. So when I wrote the book, I wanted to write a chapter that would take place there. I had a pet snail when I was a kid. Why a pet snail? Because I lived in an apartment in the city, and so a pet snail was free, and it was there, and mostly it was okay with my mother. So I just kept it in a shoebox under my bed. And when I wrote the book, I wanted to write a chapter about a pet snail because it's one of my best memories. And so here, Vero, the main character, she's at a different park in the city, and she's catching a snail that she's going to keep in her room. But as soon as she gets home, her brother comes with a cookbook, and he's reading to her the recipe for cooking snails, because you know the French eat snails. They call it escargot, and not every French person likes it. You know, everybody's different, just like here. But those who like it, they think it's a delicacy. So he's reading to her how he's going to cook her snail and eat it, her pet. Now, when I was a kid and I had a pet snail, my brother never bothered it. He left it alone. But then that's not much of a story, right? So when I wrote the chapter for the book, I made up the fact that he wanted to eat her pet, just to make it more dramatic. Here you can see the whole family together, brother, sister, and the parents. And the father, can you see he's waving around a dead chicken? And that's because he's decided to cook, to give the mother a rest. But what he does is make a mess in the kitchen. And when I was a kid, my father one day decided to cook. And he did make a mess in the kitchen, and we didn't eat very well that day. But when I wrote the book, I made the father in the book make an even bigger mess in the kitchen, just to make it more ridiculous. And then on another day, here's Vero. Can you see she's picking a remnant, what she thinks is a piece of fabric, out of her mother's sewing basket to make a dress for her doll. And she's having a great time until her mother gets home. And it turns out that that's her favorite blouse. So she's in deep trouble. And what I did when I was a kid was actually to cut up my mother's finest underwear to make underwear for my doll. And I thought it was a great idea because the fabric was just right and there was lace on the edges, but obviously my mother didn't agree with me. And so when I wrote the chapter for the book, I had Vero cut up her mother's favorite blouse because I wanted to get her in even deeper trouble than I got when I was little. One thing that my family did was to go to the park on Sunday so my brother could fly his model airplane. And nothing bad ever happened. These were happy days. But then that's not much of a story, right? So when I wrote this for the book, I made sure to arrange for disaster to strike to make it more interesting. This is the big brother teasing the little sister much too much. And so what she's going to do to get him back is set up a trick to wake him up and scare him in the middle of the night, right here. You see, she's in her PJs, standing on her bed, and it's at night. You can see the moon through the window. And she's just awakened him, and he's really scared, right? Well, when I was a kid, it's actually my big brother who did that to me. But when I wrote the book, I couldn't resist switching. And that was my revenge after 30 years. So if you ever tease your brother or sister, be careful, because you might end up in a book someday, and it won't be pretty. But if you're the one writing, see, you can transform it. You can change it. You can make it happen any way you like. And now what I'd like to do is tell you a little bit more about the other books that I wrote. Like this one is for younger readers. The title is Where is My Puppy? And it was illustrated by Hideko Takahashi. She's a Japanese artist who lives in San Francisco. And it's about this boy looking for his puppy all over the house. And this boy is supposed to be Vietnamese, except it's hard to tell because his head is shaped like a ping pong ball. But he goes around the house looking for his puppy. Like here, he's asking, is he in the bed? Can you see where the puppy's hiding? He's under the bed. But the boy can't see him, so he keeps going and looking. And he goes in the bathroom and asks, is he in the tub? Where is he? He's under the towel right there. And the story goes on from there. And so he looks all over the house, and in every picture the puppy's hiding somewhere. That the publisher also published it in Spanish. See? ¿Dónde está mi perrito? Now, I didn't write the Spanish words because my Spanish is not good enough. So they paid somebody to write the Spanish words. So see, you could have done this job and you could have been paid for it. How about that? Okay, another book that I wrote is A Pet for Grandma. Okay, and that's also a book for younger readers. And what happens in this book is that the boy in the book, his name is Ken. You can see him here. One day he notices that his grandma is sad. And so he asks his mother why, and it's because she misses her home in the Philippines where she comes from. So he decides to try to cheer her up. That's nice of him. And so he tries one thing and the other, and finally he ends up giving to his grandma to try to cheer her up something that he really loves, and that's a live bug. But where I got that story, it's from the childhood memories of my friends. I'm in the middle, and this is my friend Josie, and that's my friend Anna. And Josie and Anna are from the Philippines. And one day we were just asking each other, you know, what pets did you have when you were little? And both of them in the Philippines used to keep pet bugs. And that's where the idea for this particular book came from. Surprise Moon. Now, that's a story that's about the Vietnamese culture. So it's based on something that I experienced when I was younger. And this book was also published in Spanish. And what happens in it? Well, this boy here, because he's Vietnamese, his favorite holiday is a Vietnamese holiday. That's a children's holiday. It's called the Moon Festival. And he's showing his friends how to celebrate it. See, he's explaining to them, we can carry lanterns in a parade. So he's carrying a blue fish lantern. She's carrying a red car lantern. But Bob over here in the corner, he doesn't want to carry a pink butterfly lantern. Fortunately for him, though, there's something else that he can do. He can make noise by banging a pan with a wooden spoon. And so once they're all set with their lanterns and a way to make noise, they're ready for their parade. Look at that. They're just marching down the street. And that's part of how the holiday is celebrated. And there's a little bit more to it that's explained in the book. We could make some lanterns. And then after that, we can try having a parade too.